You have to hire based on values. You have to fire based on values.
Yep.
You have to give people, like reward them monetarily with money based on values. Like
Yep.
otherwise they don't mean diddly squat. But some people just care about money, right? Whatever. Cool, that's fine. But even if you just care about money, like culture is the way to get money. Like you need to have a good culture where people, are striving and thriving and they're happy to come to work. And also as leaders, like it makes your job easier. Like I like to think we have good culture because in a way, like I'm lazy too. I want to go somewhere where I enjoy it too. I don't have to work harder than I need to, They got the values derived from their employees, their team. They didn't just say, okay, here's a bunch of values, we're gonna slap them on the wall. And what they did was they went around and they said, talk about the people who you admire at the organization at the time he worked at Moz, and their traits. And then they listed all those traits. And then they sort of like started finding themes and stuff. And then they did a workshop with the organization or the leadership, whatever. And then they came up with these values. So it was like crowdsourced values.
Yeah. Welcome to the Marketing Mentors podcast brought to you by RedPandas Digital. I am Tasha and wow, Linda, you look so different today.
Hello, Tasha.
Obviously, if you're listening, that was not Linda.
What do you mean?
Sorry. Moby Sadiq, CEO of RedPandas and also my best friend.
Oh my God.
He's joining us today for today's episode, which is very exciting.
It's good to be here, Tash. You actually were like, when we had Inbound Buzz was the only show we had. You were the first other co-host when we did it in Inbound. We went to Boston and like you had your personality, but it's the first time you podcast and you were very shy. You're like very serious and like, yes, like, da-da. But people couldn't tell if you know you. But yeah, you're very serious. You know what I mean?
I think if you want to see a full 360 of what I was like behind a microphone.
360 would be going back to
okay, all right. A 180 of me behind a microphone. That was in 2018. So go to the archives of Inbound Buzz. I personally haven't listened to those. I'm almost a little bit too scared to because I remember how nervous I was recording them. Like I was shitting myself.
But you did it. You got through it.
Yeah.
You got through it, right? And it didn't sound bad. I think it's a good reminder anyone who gets into this stuff, like the first time is going to be your worst and you're just going to get better. And it's probably not as bad as you think.
Yeah, it's funny. It's, thinking back on that now, I remember how like nervous I used to get when I'd be recording anything or like speaking behind a microphone. I was like, shadowboxing. Because like, what if someone's like, F everyone else, I'm going to do my thing and just enjoy it and lean into it, which I think is what makes stuff interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a nice little tangent there. But look, I do have a topic I want to talk to you about today, Mobes. And I think it's quite fitting because maybe about a month and a half ago, we released our revamped brand new culture, revamped values. Sorry, not culture.
We have a new culture now. It sounds like a cult. I think that's where cult comes from, actually. They create their own culture and it just becomes a cult.
Yeah, no, we didn't create a new culture. We got some refreshed values and they were – Moby's got a really cool story as to how we got there. Now, obviously, for the longest time, we had amazing values. I think we had like 7 or 8 of them and I think they carried us to where we needed to get to. But I really want to know, Mobes, what was it – like, what were you doing? What sparked it in your brain that said, I think we need to refresh our values?
Yeah, so values is one of those things, and that's such a good story, and I do want to get into that. I think, because we do so much coaching and work with so many clients, and like Tash, we see and feel it all the time when like it's palpable. Like you're talking about one of our clients, shout out to Juve, like you walked in there and you could tell like the culture was great. You could tell there was psychological safety and that yields performance and that yields, like just coming to a place where you enjoy yourself. And we see so many clients, and even though we're coming from a marketing and coaching perspective, it's deeper than that, sometimes the problems and you're like, that culture isn't there.
Yeah.
Like people aren't the bosses, quote unquote bosses are not treating like their staff like they would treat themselves.
Yeah.
And that's always a big problem, right? So like often and especially like because a lot of things we do, like they ask you answer, it requires a lot of culture change. When you're deploying HubSpot into an organization. How much harder is it, Tash, when the culture is shit?
Yeah. It's almost like you don't want to do it because change management is huge if you don't have a growth mindset culture.
Yes.
It's very hard.
So it's all linked to, some people, I hope listeners, marketing mentors aren't like this, but some people just care about money, right? Whatever. Cool, that's fine. But even if you just care about money, like culture is the way to get money. Like you need to have a good culture where people, are striving and thriving and they're happy to come to work. And also as leaders, like it makes your job easier. Like I like to think we have good culture because in a way, like I'm lazy too. I want to go somewhere where I enjoy it too. I don't have to work harder than I need to, So I think it's really, really important. Like often a lot of problems that we see, they're cultural backed or cultural based.
Yeah.
But sorry, in response to your question, like you said, like Tash, nothing was wrong with that's the funny thing. Like anyone who knows Red Pandas, anyone who's met us would be like, well, why did you even change your values? Like nothing was wrong. They weren't broken, but we just felt like, okay, cool. Like, and this is how we started values, how everyone else does, is we came up with some values. And often like the founders of a business will come up with some values. And we came up with some values, and like you said, they carried us to for a fair ways. But I was reading Rand Fishkin's book, Lost and Founder, and he talks about his journey and his story and whatnot. And in the book, he talks about the fact that, and this was the first time I read that. I read more books and I realized, okay, he wasn't the only one who does this. But the first time in his book, I read that they got the values derived from their employees, their team. They didn't just say, okay, here's a bunch of values, we're going to slap them on the wall. They got it derived from their employees. And what they did was they went around and they said, okay, talk about the people who you admire at the organization at the time he worked at Moz, and their traits. Talk about like the highest performers or the best, not even the best performers, like the people who are great and like what are the traits. And then they listed all those traits. And then they kind of had all these traits. And then they sort of like started finding themes and stuff. And then they did a workshop with the organization or the leadership, whatever. And then they came up with these values. So it was like crowdsourced values.
Yeah, I like that.
Which was like, when I read that, I'm like, oh my God, like that's the next level. Like firstly, like, and I feel sorry for anyone listening whose company just doesn't, treats their values like shit. I genuinely do, because I think that's a really, really shitty situation to be in. And a lot of places have great values, but they just haven't articulated them. I really encourage those places to, manifest whatever they love about their organization and turn it into values. So when employees are there or the leaders are there or new employees come in, Tash, people ask us that.
They do.
We're going through a round of interviews right now, so it's very fresh in our head. They ask us, what are your values?
Yep.
People give a shit.
Yeah, all of them. I think all of the, everyone that we've hired up until now, and I think into the future, will ask what our values are because they want a vibe of what our culture's like. Obviously, you and I and Soph being the key leaders of the business, I think it doesn't take long to realize that we're high energy, fun loving, and just direct with each other. But we care for each other very much so, which is, I think that's who we are as people. So that fundamentally is what makes the values of the business like that. Because I wouldn't want to work somewhere where it's not like that. You know what I mean? Neither would you. You don't want to come to work if it's not going to be easy and happy and loving. So it makes a lot of sense. But so nothing was broken. I think we were just, the business has been growing. We've had a really interesting growth path over the last couple of years. And I feel like the refreshed values is reflective of that. And plus the team's changed so much as well. There's different people in the team. And what I think some of the values you and I, or you had written down, you got to tell us a story about the paper bag on the plane in a second. But some of those values didn't quite make it when we did the crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
Which was interesting, right? Because we were like, 100%, you and me. But we've got an echo chamber, you and I, right? And then we took it to the team and we realized actually our most valuable players, which is our team, aren't bringing this up.
That was the surprising thing to me because like I read that, and then also you were saying this earlier, like Traction and EOS talks about in a very, very similar way, like getting values like almost identical. I was like, okay, maybe that's where Rand got it from, maybe, but the whole thing, writing down the traits and then translating that. And then what surprised me the most is like what I thought were the values, like the draft, because I'm like, I'm going to trust the process anyway. I'm like, I'm going to give it a crack. And the crack, and what you're talking about was like, so I'm listening or I read the book or whatever. And then like, I'm like, oh my God, like, so when I'm on a plane, like, you've said this before, Soph has also said this, like I'm a little bit on the spectrum, So I was like, my mind was like, well, like I'll read a whole book on a plane.
Yeah.
Like a whole book, I'll read it, and then sometimes I sit there for 2 minutes, I can't concentrate. So I'm going through this brain. I'm like, oh my God, I need to come up with these values. And then like there was nothing to write on. And there was those vomit bags. So I packed the vomit bag and I just started, like if someone walked past me, they would think like
cracking Da Vinci's code.
Yeah, like cracking Da Vinci's code, like write just letters. It's like, like A, B, C, D. So I was writing all these values, and then what I was doing, and lucky there's a little bit of Wi-Fi on the plane, those, what are they called? Like, it's not anagrams.
The ones where you put the letters in and it turns it into
into a word, like whatever that's called, right?
Yeah,
like I needed to turn it into like
I think it is anagram.
Is it an anagram?
Yeah, I think
I wanted a word, right? Like I wanted a word that would, because Rand's one is anagram.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's anagram.
Rand's one was tag fee, which is like, that's pretty, whatever, right? But like they did theirs and they came up with tag fee. So I had all these values and I'm like, okay, let me try to turn it into a word because that's the easiest way to remember it.
Yeah.
And then the word that, I don't know if you remember this, I think it was
Be prosper.
Be prosper.
I remember because I remember we were on a Teams call and you whipped up the vomit bag and it was
like Singapore Airlines on one side. And
it was a maze. I mean, it was pencil as well. For some reason, you didn't have a pen. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think I had a pen.
So I'm like, they
took my pen license off me on the plane.
Who still has pencils these days? But he's written on his vomit bag, just all pencil and like it was smudgy writing. But yeah, Be prosper.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it didn't end up making the final.
No,
cut.
it didn't. I think most of them did. Most of the words did. But then, there was a few that didn't, which was interesting. So then we had an offsite where we had the key team members from our Sydney office all go away. I think Linda and I spoke about it in a few episodes ago. And at this offsite, there was a whole segment dedicated to crowdsourcing the values. And we literally just had a very open-ended question, said, all right, team, what are the values that you think we have here at Red Pandas?
Yeah, and I think just to sort of share, like in case this is useful for others who want to do something similar, and Tasha might have to remind me here. I think we're like, okay, cool. Think about a person you admire.
Or if someone you could clone for the business.
And
who would it be and
attributes?
What are the traits? Yeah,
what are the traits? Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That exercise came from EOS and we did exactly that. And it was nice because everyone picked me. No, they didn't. I picked me. But no, that was a
humility did not make the values, evidently.
Pretty sure it did, actually. But we all went around the room and everyone had picked, team members for certain reasons. And then we found the commonalities between all of that. And then I think we ended up with a final list of maybe 7 or 8. I can't remember, but I've got the screenshot. I've got the little photo of the whiteboard and our messy handwriting. And then Soph, who's our CFO and head of culture, and I sat down for 2 different intervals of an hour to try and do what you did on your plane, except we used 2 brains and a computer over different periods of time. And we probably did a bit of Google searching as well. I think the first one we came up with that we brought to you was, should I share it or should I share the whole thing?
Yeah, why not? Yeah,
what
was the first thing?
Okay, so the first one we came up with was glow, epic glow.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Epic glow. Yes. Now, I still think epic glow is fine. Yeah. But Moby was like, no, it's too
so
feminine.
What's really interesting, and this is why like diversity is important, and like diversity of thought and thinking and personalities and strengths is supremely important, because like you two, both women, lovely women, right? And we've got more women at Red Pandas than men, and more women in leadership than we have in than men. Came up with that, and you guys saw nothing wrong with that, and I'm like, guys, it sounds like we're like a beauty parlor. Like, does that not sound very feminine? Like epic glow? It sounds like something.
The other men in the room are shaking their heads. So
it sounds like an outcome my mum would want after she put oil of Olay or whatever that used to be called.
Olay, yeah, an outcome my mum would want.
So it's very like because you're worth it vibes,
Epic glow because you're worth it. Yeah, and I hear you. All right, I hear.
So, you guys didn't hear that, but at the moment I saw that, I heard that. I'm like, guys, I love it, but I'm like, it's a little bit feminine,
Yeah.
And we do have men working here.
Yeah.
So, and then we just change it to epic grow.
Well, we were able to reshuffle some words around and be able to actually, we switched it over. So our culture, our values now are grow epic, which I feel like is so fitting, right? Like epic is a sick word and that's what we're doing. We're all growing. So grow epic, no surprises. G stands for growth mindset. And I got a little tagline here. We're forever students. We love to learn, read, desire mastery in our personal and professional development. Pretty straightforward. Radical candor. We've talked about this a lot. We're radically candid. We're transparent. We speak from a place of high care and direct. Ownership. This is a big one for us at Red Pandas.
This was a new one, I think.
Huge. Yeah, it's pretty big. So we take ownership. We hold ourselves accountable. We're dedicated, resilient, and we're drivers to get shit done. I love that one. World-class communication. We're clear in our communication. We're always curious to understand. We apply question-first principles. And then on to epic, empathy. We lead with empathy, compassion, always source of support for each other. Psych safety we talk about a lot. We're psychologically safe environment for everyone to thrive. Inspire. This was one we had to do some working with because I think energy was the word that initially came from the crowdsourcing. But the idea of inspire is that we're a source of inspiration for each other. We infuse positive energy, good vibes, passion, and fun when we need it the most. And then coachable. We're open to coachable moments for feedback. We leave our egos at the door. This was probably we lead with humility. We're humble enough to know when we don't know it all, regardless of position. So we shared those with the team, about a month and a half ago. And they love it. They love it.
You know what was surprising for me, and this is why it has to be crowdsourced. And it doesn't matter, even if because I'm sure there's people listening oh, I get it. I know how the team is. And and we do, especially if you're in leadership or you're in tune with people, you have a sense, but you won't guess what they come up with. You just won't. The ones that were surprising for me, and they're there because they were themes. These are not the only things that came up. When Tash said we do the attributes and stuff, these are there because they came up a lot.
Yeah.
And the ones that surprised me were empathy and inspire.
Yeah.
And for example, the empathy thing, obviously we lead from example. I didn't realize how I'm we just do that. We just do it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But it was important enough to
important.
and people mention stories of yourself, probably more you and Soph, maybe not me, but no, me too. But I remember Soph and you coming up a lot with the empathy examples, when the person did this and the person did this. I'm we do that, and we don't realize that was that important to people.
No, I think it just comes back down to what you and Soph as the business founders the place the space that you give for all of us is your team members and the people that work at the end of the day we work for you. You give us a really just safe place to work emotionally, physically, financially. It's just, and I think that empathy that you don't realize you practice, but that you both have is huge for employees. It's huge.
We don't think it's worth mentioning, but it is. And the inspire as well.
When you say, and the inspire, you're right.
It's okay, is that even worth, but it obviously was,
For the type of people that we want in this business. I think it's key to say that, though. And we've learned that, right? We want a particular type of person at Red Panda. So we're pretty selective when we hire. And I think we've nailed it now. We know what we're looking for and we know how they hold themselves. We know what they value. And it's no surprise, grow epic, because those are the things that everyone in this business right now, that they value that as well. And that's why we're all here and we're growing together like that. And that's what you and Soph facilitate for us.
It might be worth, if you think we still have time for this, it might be worth talking about how we hire for that, the brown shorts, and how we reward, and we haven't reprimanded yet, but we should
I did think about sharing that, but then I was am I giving away all of our
secrets?
No,
I think it's really important.
How we hire at Red Pandas?
Let's talk about hiring first, because and you've been doing a really good job on this with the interviews I've been sitting in. And this is the thing, I keep saying it's not slapping them on a wall. You have to hire based on values. You have to fire based on values.
Yep.
You have to give people, reward them monetarily with money based on values. Otherwise they don't mean diddly squat. And obviously leading with example. But let's talk about hiring first. And
so you read a book, Hire for Attitude. Is that right?
Yeah, Hiring for Attitude.
Hiring for Attitude by Brown Shorts.
Yeah. If you just search that, you probably find it. Hiring for Attitude.
And it's got I remember maybe in your obsessive reading phases, and then in our book club or one of our channels in Slack, you just smash us with things that you like, and we're we like that too, and then we create a process for it, and then we start using it, right? This is one of those.
That didn't sound very safe,
That was fun.
We like it too.
That was fun. We've pushed back before. I think someone asked me to review I think you may have asked to review a software, and I'm no, straight out, we don't need another software. It's fine. But there's things, right? But nonetheless, that's the reason why you're in the visionary leadership role that you're in, because you're leading us, right? Anyway, so he sends us all these page numbers and questions to ask and highlights, and I'm okay, let's put it in a document, figure it out. And these questions are so specific And from like, I haven't read the book, but from what you've shared, you don't stuff with the questions, ask them the way they've been written, exactly that way, because they promote a typical, they promote an answer which will display someone's like values and their morals towards a certain sense of ownership of something, or honesty, transparency, like safety, the way they talk about their bosses, their past bosses. And it's so interesting because we've used these questions now to filter out people we don't want to go any further with, which traditionally we may have gone further with.
I've been really honest about this, and maybe you've shared this on this show, but like last year we made some not good and like, you know, great people, but just not a good fit for Red Pandas. You know, great in other locations or other places. Like one or two of them were just really weird.
Stop.
But I'm not going to go down. But no, I'm not saying who, but one or two of them. I'm just thinking like, I can't, some of them I just couldn't justify. Like, but the point is they went through the filter, right? They went through the filter. We missed it. And I was like, what the F? Why can't we figure this shit out?
Why do we keep making bad hires?
Yeah. So what the book is really good at, like getting you got to do your values first. That's why it's important.
Yeah.
You do your values first, and it helps you translate your values to questions, like you said, Tash, that will elicit, you know, an indication whether they meet them or not. And we did say brown shorts. I think we have to clarify what that means, because honestly, I think we should come up with a better term, because like brown shorts just sounds like you crapped your pants. You know what I mean? Like,
oh my God, I never thought of it.
You didn't? You didn't? That's what I thought of.
Never.
What brown shorts is, so people don't think that, is it's based on, it's not Delta Airways. There's an airline, maybe you can have a quick look.
I'm having a look now.
There's an airline in America. Southwest. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That they're known for being fun.
Yeah.
They're really fun. Like even like the pilots to interviews, like they'll wear shorts.
Yep.
And that's where the concept comes from. Like they show that the attendees or the interviewees, that if you're stuffy and really corporate, you're not going to suit our fun culture. So they all wear brown shorts. That's where it comes from.
So someone said, what are brown shorts? Their attitudes define your best people. Their characteristics are the people who are not achieving or performing well. Interesting. They help you tell who you shouldn't hire and identify not to hire. Identify who not to hire. So who you should and who you shouldn't. It's changed. It's revolutionized the way we do interviews, because like we would just talk about skills, build some rapport, which we're very good at, and then we would miss some very key questions.
People are very good in interviews.
Very good at interviews.
And this is not a criticism, but people are really good actors in interviews. Like everyone uses the same questions. What's your biggest weakness? What's your biggest strength? It's like, this is my biggest weakness, but it's also a strength. Like it's just, you know, and it just cuts through all of that. So I highly recommend that book as well. We could talk about that for 2 hours, but I highly recommend that book as well if you have, you know, if you hire people. If
you're hiring, even if you're a marketing manager and you've got a team and you've got, you hire people in your team. Like if you're a leader, if you're someone that has people that report to you, you have like, a role to play as their leader to withhold a certain type of culture or values in that team that you have.
100%.
I'd love to finish on like a last question, which is maybe a little bit deeper, but how do you feel like over the years, obviously starting where you did with Red Pandas and where you are now, what do you feel like some of the challenges have been over that evolvement of the culture and the values for you personally, Mobes?
Challenges, but also, like achievements. Like they say, different levels, different devils, which is certainly true. Like I think in the start, if you're a team of like sub, 3, 4, like I felt that like I was always carrying the culture. And then like it was really, like I know how much you hate praise, but it was nice having you there because like I was able to share that load, like that cultural load. Like I didn't always have to be on, and then like, sometimes like these days, like you're not feeling well and then I take that on or someone else in leadership takes that on.
Yeah.
But I think like, as the team grew, I think and if you heard me say this for the last couple of years, I quickly realized for this team to grow, we need to build leaders.
Yeah.
You have to build leaders because your attention gets split, your focus gets split. You can't be across everything. You need to empower leaders and help them be leaders so they can carry the vision, they can carry the culture. Like those two key things, the vision and the culture. So I think the challenge, and I think we do a good, there's obviously things that like every business that we could do better. But the thing that I feel like we do pretty well at is the that challenge of like, growing team, and then having leaders that will like live and breathe those values.
Yeah.
And challenge you too as a leader, which is really, really important.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you, Linda. Moby, it's been great having you on. Until next time.
I just felt really pretty when you called me Linda.
Oh, please. Please.
Thanks for being, it was a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Tash.